One story that you may have read in this issue of Letters was about Bert Kubli. He went through a lot in the Army in the 1960s. Anybody read that in Letters? Yeah. Much harassment. Bert is here tonight along with his husband, Mark, also a veteran. So I'd like to read a slightly abridged version of Bert's story to end our program. Bert Kubli might have had a lobotomy, jumped in front of a moving metro car, or been knifed to death. But none of those real possibilities happened. Bert stopped into camp here one day and learned about this program tonight. And at age 87, he decided to finally tell his story. As a 19-year-old in 1958, Bert joined the Air Force at the height of the repressive McCarthy era. Bert, who'd known he was gay since high school, hated himself for it. He dated women, and he says, I had a pretty girlfriend, but I was afraid my secret would be discovered. He buried his feelings like so many other people and developed a terrible self-hatred. When asked by the Air Force recruitment team if he had homosexual tendencies, he flat out lied. The military then sent him to Syracuse University to learn Russian. There, he and a military roommate became friendly. While they both admitted they were gay, there was no sexual relationship. And after schooling, they went to their respective posts and kept up a friendship by mail. Bert was sent to Turkey, stationed in an underground bunker monitoring Soviet broadcasts. At that post, and for the entire 4 years of his service, he refrained from any sexual behavior, and he says, I hid my secret. But in 1961, a few months before his enlistment was up, Bert was called in and told his superiors had reason to believe he was homosexual. I was horrified, he said. Turns out that Bert's Syracuse friend had been kicked out of the military for being gay. And because of their letters to each other, they started investigating him. The inquiry began in Turkey and went on for 18 months, by which time Bert was back in the U.S. and at Fort Meade, still totally closeted, engaged to his girlfriend, and hoping to leave the service for a job at the National Security Agency. In that year and a half of constant badgering and questioning, he was interrogated at least 22 times, with superiors asking, are you part of the nest of homosexuals we have here? He says, I detested myself, the officers who interrogated me, and my whole life. In the end, their incessant questions, innuendo, and cruelty got to him. After a painfully grueling session, Bert broke down and admitted to having had homosexual experiences in high school. Instantly, they revoked his clearances, the NSA job, and they made him clean floors with the other men watching. He calls that time in 1961 totally humiliating. Next, Bert was put on trial in a 2.5-day ordeal where his fiancée testified on his behalf. Bert insisted he was about to marry, and in the end, seeming really confused, the officers found him not guilty. But not before recommending, because of his sexual confusion, that he have a medical lobotomy, a devastating and now discredited surgery severing the brain's prefrontal cortex connections to cure psychiatric disorders. The procedure would have left him unable to concentrate, form emotional responses, and he would lose all initiative. The suggestion was horrifying, and I was shocked, he remembers. Luckily, a lobotomy was only recommended, not ordered, and Bert left the service with an honorable discharge. He hurriedly married his fiancée, buried his homosexual feelings, and escaped from this military nightmare. Bert and his wife raised 2 sons and ultimately were married for 35 years with 5 grandkids. Bert worked as a graphic artist, first with the government and ultimately for many years with the National Endowment for the Arts. But in 1993, something happened that changed Bert's life completely. While he rode the DC Metro, the train stopped at DuPont Circle. It was the day of the 1993 March on Washington for lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights. All of a sudden, the metro doors opened to a flood of excited, exhilarated people with rainbow flags and equality t-shirts, and they were smiling, laughing, and proud of being gay. It stunned Bert. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. That day led to a lot of reflection and ultimately depression. He says, I realized some people were gay and happy, so unlike everything I had been through. He compared it with his own life, his self-hatred, his missed opportunities. After that, I had an epiphany that it's okay to be gay. I did start to have secret gay experiences, but I became very, very depressed. After coming home one day and telling his wife, I'm gay and I can't take it anymore, he and his wife went to counseling, hoping to find a way to stay married. During one session, Bert's wife blurted, I'm thinking of killing him. And she seemed to mean it. For at least 2 weeks at home in their separate bedrooms, Bert feared he'd be knifed in his sleep. I was scared, but I felt terrible, Bert said. She was a great mother and grandmother, and I was distraught about hurting her, but I was terrified of what would happen. The depression worsened, he said. I came within 3 seconds of jumping in front of a metro train. The only thing that saved me was the thought of my youngest grandson. I couldn't do that to him. Somehow, I didn't jump. And when Bert's wife finally said, you have to leave, he did. He began meeting men, feeling better about himself. And in his 50s, he says he had his teenage years all over again. And despite the changes, Bert kept a deep connection to his adult sons and grandkids, although he and his former wife no longer spoke. It was 2001 when Bert met his now husband, Mark, a former Marine, and the connection was instant. They have been happily together for almost 25 years. It took me a long time to love myself, Bert says now, especially in light of his harrowing military experience. But I now know that being gay is something to be proud of, and I am.